So in today's episode, we're going to be talking about how big tech continues to wield power in unhelpful ways, but maybe things will change now that our pets are getting involved, and how trends in small tech might actually be helping our furry friends. And talking about our furry friends, one second, I'll just go get him. And talking about our furry friends, I'll be talking about whether or not I think soft power is having a resurgence. What do you think, buddy? But I will be trying to come up with a new name for soft power. Why does everything that is not aggressive have to be soft? Not that there's anything wrong with being soft, of course. We'll be looking at the big news headlines and anything that might be thought-provoking that has caught my eye, and we'll dig into it and see if we can make a little bit more sense of the world. Firstly, welcome to this series. I'm trying out something brand new, because this is where we are going to be dedicated to going through some recent business discourse, but not just focusing on those big headlines, although they will definitely come up, but also the undercurrents that sit underneath it. What are those things that are shaping our future? I want to talk about things that impact real humans who are working to make a real impact through business. We hear a lot about big tech, but we don't really hear about small tech, for want of a better word, and small businesses and impactful projects more generally. And I really want to change that. So if you've got your own news, or if you've got news about people in your life working to make an impact through business or through startups or through any other means, then please let me know. I'd love to look at what they're doing in more detail. And also, if you see any funny or provocative reels on TikTok or Instagram, then please do tag me in them as well, so I can start really digging into the things that you're interested in. We're building this together. So I'll run down what I've been seeing recently, both in the headlines, but also offline, as I coach, mentor, speak, attend events that are related to the business ecosystem. The community that I generally work with is the tech startup ecosystem, and we can be really heavily impacted by what's going on in the headlines, but we also learn a lot through our peer group. So I want to bring some of that too. Now, this video is not really deep dives, I'll go in a little bit, but it is a source of inspiration for further deep dives. So if we touch on topics, or maybe don't touch on topics that you think are really important to dive into further, then please let me know about that in the comments too. So let's go. Right, we are starting with the wealthiest man in the world, because apparently he needs more money to motivate him, or at least that's what his shareholders think. Other shareholder meetings are like a snooze fest. Ours are bangers. Elon was dancing with robots at the recent Tesla shareholder meeting following the announcement that Tesla shareholders had voted in favor of a $1 trillion pay deal. Now, there has been a 7-year legal battle, and there is opposition amongst some really credible shareholders, but eventually this deal went through. But this doesn't mean he's going to become a trillionaire. He has to hit several points, lots of different milestones, both in terms of EBITDA, but other milestones as well. Here, with the biggest milestone, Tesla reaching an 8.5 trillion market cap. Today it is 1.27. Operational milestones include him having to deliver 20 million Teslas, 10 million self-driving cars, and 1 million humanoid robots called Optimus. Original. So let's start by thinking about this idea of motivation. What is his actual motivation here? I once asked Larry Ellison directly what was his motivation. Now, if you don't know Larry Ellison, he's the founder of Oracle. Earlier this year, he actually overtook Elon Musk as the richest man in the world. And I wanted to know, like, what was it that motivated him? Clearly, it's not that need to pay the bills, right? And he openly said, yeah, obviously the money itself is not specifically the motivation, but progress towards new goals, including kind of beating competitors and growing what they already had, was part of the motivation. He wanted to see that needle move up. We've all been there. We are all that person, right? There's a reason why on charity fundraisers they have those what are those things called? I can't even remember. Where you fill up the amount of money that's raised. We all like to work towards tangible goals, and it feels great when we hit them. Get that little dopamine rush. Competition, it's a fun pursuit to stay ahead of competitors. It's a way of giving yourself purpose and drive. And it was quite interesting listening to what Warren Buffett said. What often bothers very wealthy CEOs, they are human after all, is that other CEOs are getting even richer, saying envy and greed walk hand in hand. I only wish that these fantasy competitive numbers that these ultra wealthy people were working towards were more focused on the good of everybody. Why don't they compete against how much world hunger they can solve? Compete on how much carbon you can get out of the atmosphere. Like, my anger is bubbling up already, and Billie Eilish, I am right there with you. Thank you for being the voice of reason. Now, the next question is this whole thing just a fantasy? Every single listed company is just looking for other aspects of PR that are going to get them noticed and maybe give a little bump in that share price. Can Elon Musk deliver? And does it even matter? He himself said if he doesn't deliver, he doesn't get the deal. Is he really the only person who can deliver this kind of thing? Alexandra Mertz, the Tesla shareholder known as Tesla Boomer Mama, and who voted for the deal, strongly believes that he can do it, and he's the only one who can do it, saying, I'm very confident he can hit the milestones. He's shown us before what's possible. And look, I don't deny that Elon Musk has had successes, obviously. Even if we were just to look at those financial successes, he's also done lots of things that have enabled him to get to that place. But I need to immediately call out this myth that any particular individual has superpower genius powers. Unless we all do. There are so many factors at play. Now, of course, he is now the richest man in the world, so he actually does have powers that some of us don't have. Money does talk. He has more than enough money and influence to make share prices go up, like when he bought $1 billion worth of Tesla shares, and they jumped by 6%, and to make share prices go down, like the whole Doge thing. So sure, he has some power, but he has a bit of disruptive power there too. So many who voted for the deal did it along the same thinking as Musk himself, which was, this is basically a game. Yeah, let's vote for this deal because that will focus him on Tesla. If it's enough to motivate him, then from their perspective as shareholders of this business, great. Their shareholding shoots up, the value of the company shoots up, and his payment doesn't really make much of a difference to them because their shares will still be worth more. And if he doesn't hit those goals, then probably the value may have gone up just in pursuit of those big goals. Like, aim for the stars, you might land on the moon. That kind of mentality, right? Or land on Mars, I guess, in this case. If he doesn't pass go, he doesn't get his $200. And the truth is, many of the goals on this list do seem pretty improbable. I've read quite a few interesting analyses in preparation for this, which call this package pure fantasy, including a whole analysis in Millennial Dividends, which obviously I will link to, which even being optimistic makes it very clear that a lot of the financial goals, the financial milestones, are really going to be difficult to hit. So then let's break down some of those other milestones. 20 million vehicles. Currently 1.61 million vehicles are projected to be sold. Tesla vehicles are predicted to be sold in 2025. And this is actually a drop from 2024. So we're currently trending downwards from that. So there's a big flip required if we want to hit that goal. 10 million active full self-driving subscriptions. Now, there are people who do have the self-driving subscriptions with Tesla. A few 100,000 is the estimate at the moment. But the technology is still not fully proven. And we will talk a little bit more about fully self-driving cars later on in this episode. Now, the robot data is when it really starts to get wild. Not that Tesla aren't already doing R&D in this work, they are. There's an amazing Substack post by Rodney Brooks on humanoid robots and why they won't learn dexterity. And while I think there's probably some loopholes here where we're going to suggest something as a fully humanoid robot when perhaps it still goes on wheels, for example, or doesn't actually do things with hands. It's still incredibly unlikely. And I don't know about you, but I still really struggle to see the point in creating humanoid robots. Let me know if you fully understand, or if you would even want a humanoid robot for your business or at home or in other aspects of your life. But you know, all of this improbability is exactly the game that Elon Musk likes to play. What does everybody else say is impossible? Let's do that. Now, as I've already mentioned, there are some naysayers, including some big shareholders in Tesla, not enough to have vetoed the vote. And they vary from people who just don't understand the logic, partly because this isn't really built on logic. This is built on the feelings of an unbelievably wealthy man and the people who worship him, all the way to people who really do see the quite devastating apocalyptic implications of the wealthiest man continuing to get wealthier, continuing to have more control, continuing to unleash an army of 1 million humanoid robots. The general issue of the greed that Warren Buffett was talking about, incentivizing with such big pay packets itself is incredibly problematic. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. Because if we think that this doesn't impact us as kind of everyday people just trying to live our lives, it absolutely does. Because once you start getting CEOs thinking that they are worth 20 times, 100 times, 1 million times more than the everyday people in their team, 1 billion times more, nearly, then we're playing into an already incredibly damaging polarization and wealth inequity. So as I said, several big pension funds opposed the deal, as did L&G, which is Legal and General, because even though the pay package was described as necessary to ensure that Musk focused on Tesla, there were no actual explicit arrangements in the deal to say he had to focus on Tesla. And he's not exactly known for his focusing. He is known for trying to prove people wrong, though. On the darker side, Neil Minow, the vice chair of Value Edge Advisors and has been one of the more vocal opponents of this deal, has an issue because this is going to give him more control and it's going to dilute other shareholders. There's a big equity increase. It's actually the reward for hitting these goals. It's more than an outrage, it's fraud. Musk moved Tesla from Delaware to Texas because his previous pay deal was twice overturned by Delaware courts. If only that regulation went a little bit further. Joanna Bryson, a professor of ethics and technology at Berlin's Hertie School of Governance, thinks that this is also emblematic of a much wider problem, with big tech's growth and power creating extreme inequality, which is unsustainable. We can all see it coming. She said there's a big security problem with individuals having more power than countries. And she looked back to post-World War I and the pre-crash bubble that was created. And that was a similar time where industry was really kicking off and we had individuals who were growing this massive wealth, saying that anything that's giving disproportionately large amounts of money to any one person is creating entropy. So moving from order to chaos. Now, my physics brain kind of sees this the other way around, which is what we're actually doing. Entropy will naturally move from order to chaos. That's how it works. It's when we try and contain that there are, in fact, issues. And by giving all that money to one person, then what we are in fact doing is trying to create order, less distribution, less chaos, but that is ultimately going to cause disruption. All that potential cannot sit in one place forever. And it is building up an extreme potential for everything to explode, unfortunately at the detriment probably to hardworking everyday people. Let me know in the comments if this makes sense to you or whether I completely misunderstood it. I am not an economist after all. So why does this matter to real humans and real entrepreneurs? Disproportionate money in one person's hand, continued massive amounts of wealth inequality means that the power distribution is also completely off. Money speaks. This man's gonna get to make many, many decisions because of the amount of money that he holds. I do think when I think about this, it gets me thinking about my own relationship to power. And being an entrepreneur is two sides of the same coin, which is we are looking for more control in our own lives often. We want to make an impact. We want that impact to be around things that we care about. And with that comes a lot of responsibility. I think it's incredibly important for entrepreneurs to have incredible leadership skills. That does not include amassing everything for oneself and seeing oneself as being more powerful than everybody else. Now, what we see with Elon Musk is basically him saying, look, I'm a builder, I'm a creator, and I'm going to create good things. But he's also hasn't got the humility to say that actually some of those things should be checked every now and again. And as good leaders, as entrepreneurs, I think that we should be questioning things. We should be checked on what we do. And we should be continuing to have that humble confidence. Thirdly, it sends the wrong message about what motivates people. And I do think this is partly the fault of the media, who've totally focused on this $1 trillion package, which is purely a PR exercise. Elon Musk is motivated by slightly unachievable goals. He is an engineer after all. I work with many engineers and they are there to solve the problems that they see. They can get really obsessive about it. And he has a track record of trying to solve impossible problems. That's kind of good. I don't mind that. What I have a problem with is this idea that we need to continue to motivate people with, first of all, external motivations, because this is basically the message that the media is spinning on this one. If people need more and more and more and more money in order to be motivated, we really should question their levels of motivation in the first place. It's a really difficult situation we find ourselves in now because there is so much of that external motivation that is provided to people, when actually teams work so much better when they are driven by more internal motivations. No one needs this kind of wealth unless he's going to turn around and just start solving all of the real problems in the world. So this is my next point. Encouraging the development of 1 million humanoid robots. Now this under the control of essentially one person is extremely concerning. The only reason this doesn't really worry me as much as it should, but I still think it should be extremely concerning, is that I still don't think that it will be fully successful. Could it be successful enough to cause a great deal of destruction and damage? Absolutely. We already have robots out there that are deployed in war and killing people. I have been in an innovation ecosystem for a long time, and I really do hate that this is the direction that technology is going in, when most of the people that I work with are using technology to really make positive differences in people's lives. And sometimes I feel like, why don't we all just give up? Because let's face it, these big players have so much power. But we're here, we're living our lives. All we can do is work on our pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. So that's what we're going to keep on doing. Which leads me on to my final point here, which is it completely misrepresents what it is to be an entrepreneur. Now, there's some people I know who think that like all entrepreneurs are total dicks, and that it's a really kind of wanky name. I personally don't see that, because I see so many people who are sacrificing a lot of the things for their own life to build something that impacts other people positively. They are some of the hardest working people I know. They're some of the most passionate people that I know. They're the most courageous people I know. And I hate the fact that they get a bad name. And I've said it already, I'm going to say it again. Can we stop with this myth of genius? If he is the only one who can ultimately achieve this, it is because of his wild amounts of wealth. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, a virtuous circle. So it's not him, it's the circumstances he is now in that is going to help him to achieve this if he can. So, as Elon works to try and roll out his army of robots for the benefit of Tesla shareholders, tech layoffs continue to be on the rise. In 2024, there were more than 150,000 tech layoffs, and TechCrunch now actually has a layoff watch on its website. And don't just think this is in other parts of the world, this is happening in the UK. 1 in 6 employers in the UK plan layoffs due to AI in 2026. And it's those in enterprise firms who are most at risk of layoffs. Now, not all of this is because of AI, and I really liked this Morning Brew post, so I'll let them explain. I get asked a lot about what this means, especially for students, for younger people, for people in school right now, and the future of work. The whole notion of is AI taking our jobs is here, and it is certainly causing things to be restructured. If AI is allowing more individuals, more companies in California to continue to amass more and more money, or companies in Texas, I guess, in the case of Tesla, and there is continuing to be more and more inequality, by its nature, that says that it is going to be more of a struggle for everyday people. So what can we do about it? First of all, layoffs from enterprise often means that there's very talented people who are then able to innovate, who are able to come together and create their own companies. We see this happening time and time again. So it may be that there is some kind of boost in the startup scene and in more local startup scenes. I think that that would be excellent, and I hope that more local governments, more local schemes can continue to support that. In answer to the question whether, for example, a computer science degree is worth nothing, I would say that, what was my chemistry degree worth? Degrees aren't about just very, very specific subject matter, and my knowledge of computer science degrees is actually, they are really good because they teach a lot of things that go beyond just coding or the types of tasks that AI can do. They talk about architecture, about systems, they talk about problem solving, creativity. They give you chances to work on projects and to engage with other businesses. So from that perspective, I wouldn't be sitting here saying one specific degree is better or worse, or you shouldn't do a degree at all, or any of those kind of things. I think that that's a pretty personal choice, although I'd love to know in the comments what you think about that. But I also think about what's made me resilient in my career, which hasn't been one of being in enterprise, of having a lovely salary for my whole career. It's one where I've been able to make my own money, have my own freedom, have my own agency, use my time in the way that I need to use my time, and I have been able to get financial gains from that too. And there's 2 things that I've done. One is that I've had a portfolio career, so I'm not reliant on that single job. I have a whole distribution of income streams. Secondly, I use a wide range of skills, and I think what we all really need to be able to do is make sure that we are focusing on our creativity, on our connections and community building, be part of an ecosystem. And that's going to help with resilience when as this paradigm shift continues to happen. There is definitely things that governments are going to need to do. And I really hope some of that is about dismantling some of the big players and going against these things that I was just talking about with Tesla. So we are certainly seeing anti-AI sentiment. And one event has happened recently that has taken this anti-AI sentiment into the heartland of some big tech. The so-called mayor of 16th Street was found unresponsive under a Waymo car. Witnesses say it didn't slow or swerve or attempt to avoid KitKat, the much beloved bodega cat. So apparently what happened was he walked under a stationary car, which then pulled away. This actually makes me so sad. My cat doesn't go outside. because these are stuff that my nightmares are made of. So after this happened, there was a lot of mourning for KitKat. He was really loved in the community. And Jackie Fielder, a San Francisco city supervisor, says that she plans to introduce legislation to allow counties to decide whether or not they will permit the operation of autonomous vehicles. Others have honoured KitKat in other ways. Daniel Zaidan, who's part of the family who owns Randers, where he would often be found, released a meme coin to honour KitKat and raise money for local vets and animal welfare organisations. Waymo said, "We send our deepest sympathies to the cat's owner and the community who knew and loved him, and we will be making a donation to a local animal rights organisation in his honour. The trust and safety of the communities we serve is our highest priority." And this is so sad, but it got me thinking, would a human driver have done any better? True story, it took me 2 years to learn to drive because I was really scared of being in control of a killing machine, which is what all cars are. One of our cats when I was growing up did get hit by a car, and I think knowing that those kind of accidents can happen can make it really scary. So I wanted to look into the data, and of course there's pretty limited data at the moment on whether or not driverless cars have more or less accidents, are safer or less safe than human-driven cars. But most of the data that is out there already does show that self-driving cars have less crashes. In fact, the crash rates are 5 times lower than human crash rates, with a 96% reduction in any injury. Cyclist, motorcycle, pedestrian, secondary crash, and singular vehicle crashes were also less likely in driverless cars. Now, if you've got any data that contradicts that, I would really love to see that as well, because I think this is still very much in its infancy. But I don't think any of us could have done any different. What I actually think is technology could, in fact, decrease the likelihood of this type of accident happening in the future as well. I believe the biggest issue here was that witnesses were there, and perhaps if it was a human driving the car, they would have been able to say, "Stop, stop, stop," and they might have been able to stop it. But if there weren't any witnesses, a human would have been in a similar situation. So why does this matter to us? Obviously, first and foremost, because a cat died, and well, I can't tell every story about every cat that dies, and honestly, I'd be a puddle on the floor if I did, but this is sad. That isn't the only reason, though, it should matter to us. I think there's something here about the loss of regulatory control over technology, but perhaps also how we get back that regulatory control over technology, which is a massive conversation. Dozel said, "The mayor of this space was taken from us by technology that none of us asked for. And crucially to this resolution, none of us consented to." What does it mean to consent to new technology? Which technologies cross the threshold of requiring consent? Now, I think this is incredibly interesting. We've obviously seen certain aspects of this conversation with data protection bills and GDPR, thinking about data and our use of data and how technology uses data and how businesses use data. And there is different regulation in different places around technology, gun laws being one of them, right? Laws to do with how old you have to be to drive a car, the fact you can't be under the influence of alcohol. These are actually all laws around the use of technology. But have we gone past the point of no return? When we have Nobel Prize winners who used AI saying that they don't know how it works, how do we regulate for that? How do we keep ourselves and the people we care about safe in that? But also, how as humans, as innovators, as creators, do we continue to create in a way that's actually helpful for humans? This is a really, really important job for anyone who is leading our companies and who is leading our countries. I do think it's important here to highlight some of the hypocrisy. Of course, there's a lot of feeling around this. I feel those emotions too. But people drive cars. Cats get hit all the time. There is data that says that this technology can be safer. And I do think it was interesting in this particular case that a meme coin was launched at the same time as people kind of shouting about technology. We're also using technology to honor this cat. I I think the final thing I'm taking away from this story is actually like the power of community, and the fact that this is a really big story comes from the fact that this was a community that had connections, where this cat was really well loved, where they've all come together to support the cat. The vet waived the cat, waived the fees that would have been incurred from him trying to rescue KitKat. This whole story was a sad accident, but I'd love to know what your thoughts are. Okay, so we've had some sad cat news. I feel like we need to start looking at who's helping the animals. Let's have some happy cat news. Well, not specifically cats. So while big tech is killing cats, we are seeing a strong pattern of veterinary and agricultural startups. The global pet care market has surpassed 200 billion, with segments like pet tech. Yep, pet tech. You're my pet tech. Sorry, I had to get rid of some of that KitKat sadness. And subscription-based food services driving much of the upward trend. And just last month in the UK, the CMA, which is a watchdog, proposed reforms across the vet sector, including regulations to develop a more competitive veterinary pharmaceutical sector. And this isn't just something I'm seeing in the news and seeing in investments. Recently, I was coaching businesses to pitch at an event called Investment Futures. And suddenly I noticed that a disproportionate amount were in vet care or in the animal space. We have Dinnerville, who are using particle size measurements to make a difference from the farm to farmer. They've done some amazing things with the fertility of bulls. They've actually got some podcasts about it if you want to go and have a look at it. Just Google portable semen quality analyzer if you want to find that one. Maybe don't. And we also had Scooch, pet healthcare management platform. It includes insurance, and actually of all of the companies, I think this was the one that had the highest revenue of all the pitching companies. I think, I might be wrong, so apologies if so. Honestly, as a pet owner myself, I am probably more likely to end up doing something like this for Angus than I am for me, although they haven't yet diversified from dogs to cats. Apparently they will be at some point in the future, so keep an eye on Scooch. But this isn't the only time I came across pet and animal startups. I was working on a spin-out program, and of course with spin-outs, what that means is I'm working with companies who are coming out of universities with some really interesting technology that can have impactful application. And what I'm finding there is a lot of the biomedical or the kind of health diagnostics applications are considering the agricultural or the veterinary markets as their beachhead market. Even though it's a smaller market than the wider human health market, it is potentially a more accessible market for those earlier stage companies. This is an approach that was spearheaded by a peer of mine at Ferrix, when a few years ago they produced Ferricalm, which you can go and get. In fact, if you have IBS, like, you totally need this product, because it's the only product on the market that will help you with your gut health when you're actually having a flare-up. Now, with my autoimmune condition, I have Crohn's-like conditions, and I know exactly what that's like. You want to be able to take something when you are in active flare. So many companies are using the veterinary or the agri-tech market to get that early traction, and then they can use that to leverage the investment required to get the products to a wider market. And we've seen many other startups get funding in this space. Just recently, PetScribers raised 290k, which is a platform to help simplify the veterinary written prescription process. Actually helps you purchase pet drugs online, which certainly as a pet owner sounds good. I was a little concerned about what that means for veterinary drugs getting out there, and I'm sure that that's exactly what they're working on. Going a bit bigger and a bit further afield, San Diego startup Gallant recently raised 18 million to bring FDA approved, ready to use stem cell therapies to veterinary medicine. So hopefully that will help them get through the regulatory processes and bring whole new ways to treat our beloved animals. Just some of the other veterinary and animal health startups are listed here. So why do I want to talk about this? Why is this interesting? It's still not massive, and it probably never will be the biggest thing ever. But I think the lesson here for startups is look for those adjacent markets. Always look for those other spaces where you might be able to make a difference. They might be smaller, but if they're easier to access, then this can get you on the move. There is very, very little investment out there for pre-seed startups, certainly here in the UK. So the more you can do to get moving, prove out your product in a market sooner rather than later, ideally with some revenue, then the easier it's going to be able to grow your business in the future. And I think it's quite interesting to look at this sector. I know that many startups have overlooked it because of the more mature, the bigger human healthcare sector. But markets that are less served might also be easier to innovate within. What else was going on that kind of saw this rise in veterinary startups? We can blame COVID for this one too. So many of us became pet owners during COVID. It was March the 26th, 2021, Angus came into my life. So I believe that was during a lockdown or just after a lockdown. So I wasn't immune to that factor. And also SaaS and subscription models work extremely well for pet care. Pets are very regular things. They like their routines. We kind of know a lot about what they're going to be doing on a week-to-week and a month-to-month basis. So they lend themselves extremely well to these kind of tech platforms. And then some of the other things that are going on in this space are faster diagnostics using AI imaging, also something that we see in the human health tech space. Automation of processes, like reminding clients of veterinary appointments, or processing invoices at vet practices, setting up remote consultations, having wearables to monitor vitals in animals. And you think you've heard all of this before? It's because we have, because this is exactly how tech is being used across the human health space. So this is another lesson that we can learn, taking things that are happening in one space and applying that somewhere else. Many incredibly impactful businesses have been formed that way. Now, of course, because this is a developing sector, we're also seeing that it's then attracting increased regulation. So if I was to give you my hustle bro response to that, I'd be like, do this now, get ahead before even more regulation comes in. But the ethical leader thing to say to that is make sure you've got your efficacy trials locked in. I personally want to work with people and engage with people who are creating businesses in that more ethical way. And if nothing else, what does this story tell us? Even when the whole world feels uncertain, it can feel destructive, we will always be obsessed with our pets. Okay, folks, it's time for a little interlude. Every time I do one of these videos, I am also going to bring you leadership lessons. Not just any old leadership lessons. These leadership lessons are going to come from below deck. Because one of the ways I switch off all the voices in my head is by watching a lot of reality TV, but also because I am fascinated by the team dynamics on below deck. Can you imagine working with your colleagues 24/7 and having to share a room with them? Ooh. And I am particularly fascinated by the leadership of these captains. And of course, we're going to start with a female leader. A few weeks ago on Below Deck, the deck crew was struggling. 2 members of the 4-person team were useless. Tessa had a lot to say, did nothing on deck, and didn't appear to have any of the skills required for the job. Christian, on the other hand, wanted to get stuck in and worked hard, but had an overinflated sense of his own capabilities and made some seriously bad health and safety decisions, including letting a very drunk guest convince him that he needed to dip his feet into the ocean before then just sliding on in the dark at night. First-time bosun Nathan had come in on the back foot because he'd been ill right before the very first charter, which meant that he'd missed some of that prep time and that kind of getting to know the team and teaching the team. He had to do that as he was going along. But honestly, every effort he made with these people was really not working. And poor Max, the other member of the team, who incidentally had petted a jellyfish and then wiped his eye, and he's the one we're seeing as the capable member of the team, by the way, was left having to do everything else, and he was starting to clash with Christian, leaving him angry and exhausted. Something had to change. So Nathan escalated this to Captain Sandy, who then gave him a choice. There were 2 members of the team who were not up to scratch, making the environment dangerous and the team ineffective. So which one would you choose? who's going home tonight? Nathan chose both, and Sandy backed him. When he made this choice, I let out a little cheer on my sofa because temporarily a more experienced two-person team without the distraction and frustration of the underperformers was actually an improvement. And as for the two who were let go, well, I think Tessa blew her chance to be on any future episodes of Below Deck when she said something pretty derogatory about Captain Sandy. Sacrilegious. But who knows, Christian might go away, get more experience. We've seen it before on Below Deck. And as it turns out, one of the stews, V, also got a new opportunity due to the double firing. And we can talk about that on another day. So I think we had some really excellent examples of good leadership here. 1, Nathan attempting to solve the different problems in different ways. He used different motivation methods, he used training, he used communication. He was observing the team and how they were working together, and he picked up on the problems relatively quickly. When he did pick up on the problems, he escalated it to Sandy. And Sandy had already shown her amazing leadership credentials by creating environments where she knew that he would be comfortable to come and talk to her about such things. Sandy giving Nathan the choice, again, empowered him as the leader of that team to step up, albeit with her support. Also, I like the fact that she set it up as the choice between the two, because the most obvious thing was that they both needed to be fired. But she didn't explicitly say that outright because she wanted him to be the one to make that choice. Then the fact that Nathan made the bold choice to fire both of them. Now, I don't revel in anyone losing their jobs, but I am a firm believer that people who are not showing up, who are not motivated by the right things, who don't have the capabilities, they really impact the team in a way that is unhelpful. In this particular case, there are really huge health and safety, potential health and safety consequences as well. What would you have done in this situation? Let me know. And I should say there is a whole Reddit thread on this already. Every month I'm going to be doing some startup shoutouts, and this month there are a couple I would really like to do. The first, I'm going to shout out Peequal, who recently raised funding. As the name says, they are making peeing more equal, and in particular they work at kind of big events and festivals, and they have created toilets that have made the female toilet experience more similar to that of the men's experience. They've recently raised funding, so congratulations to them. If you want to know more, we did interview them on the Mind Styling podcast, and I will put a link to that in the description below. Another company who have recently raised funding are Phasecraft, who work with quantum computing software, and I want to shout them out. They appeared on the Founded and Grounded podcast. So again, you can go and check out more of those stories. What are we watching, reading and listening to this month? I've already mentioned that I've been doing a lot of watching reality TV just to switch my brain off. So I don't think I've got anything particular I want to talk about in terms of things that I'm watching. Things that I've been reading, however. So I've just finished reading The Look, which is a new book by Michelle Obama. Actually, let me just go and get it for you. So I've just been finishing reading this book. There is some reading to do. It's not the longest book to read, because you can see it's actually a very, very visual book. Really beautiful, which is why I bought this hard copy. And actually, this does really interest me because it's about the soft power of fashion. First of all, I'll just talk to you about kind of one of the core premises in here, which is, and something that Michelle Obama talks about using. So she speaks about the fact that she had to create a delicate balance with fashion. She knew that what she wore would be scrutinized. And this is true for women and feminine people. What you wear, how you look, hair, beauty does actually impact you. So she knew that, first of all, she had to pay some attention to her clothes, and I think any women out there listening, you know the same. Like, it's much harder just to show up. If I showed up without brushing my hair, without putting any makeup on, just in, without really thinking about my outfit, then people often think you're sick. They maybe don't want to talk to you. There is a degree of having to dress in a certain way to be taken seriously. The way Michelle Obama has leveraged this is to know that what she wears might get some attention. And then once she's got that attention, then that is when she will let her important messages land. And I think without knowing it, this is a trick I've used my entire life. One place where I've always felt confident is with my clothes. And so even if I felt terrible in everything else, even if I felt like I didn't have a voice, I would always dress in a certain way. And it turns out that didn't go unnoticed. That has helped me to have a voice, to be heard, to be listened to. Do I want to be noticed just for my clothes? No. Do I want my clothes to be noticed? Do I enjoy fashion? Yes. Do I like the fact this is referred to as soft power? Not really, no. Because the implication is that it's not about intelligence. It's not about influence. It's not impactful. And it's inherently incredibly gendered. Something soft, something is feminine. Now, there is nothing wrong with power coming from soft and feminine things, but we do still live in a world where there is gender inequity. Now, I don't need to have hard power, but I am not seeking to have power over, rather I'm seeking to have power with others. And what I wear can be part of making that connection. Isn't about softness either. What do you think? I'd really like to understand your thoughts. Let me know in the comments. So this leads me to my final undercurrents. I've been out and about a lot this past month. It's always busy for me in the autumn. I do a lot of events, been working with a lot of startup companies. I have been to not just preparing them for pitches and presentations, many of them aren't even going down the investment route at the moment, actually. Some may do in the future. But I've also been doing a lot of work across the tech ecosystem, although I didn't head out to Web Summit, which is on as I speak. And I've also been out there more telling my own stories. This month I did 2 talks, one on wellness and one on finance. And looking backwards with some distance has been really helpful for me to see where I can add more value. It is helping me to reinvigorate my YouTube and my social media as well. And by doing that, I'm then getting more interactions, more conversations, more communications from other people. And I think the big thing I'm coming away with, which may not be apparent from everything that I've spoken about, is some optimism. I think a lot of people have felt like they've been treading water a little bit. They've spent quite a lot of time planning, preparing. I guess they've done that inspiration and now they're ready to be out there in the world. So I'm hearing a lot of companies talk about execution, about delivery, about moving to a next phase as we go into 2026. And the thing that they're craving as we go into that is ecosystem, is community. There was a lot of connection that somewhat died during the pandemic. And then as we came back out into the real world, everyone has become very practical. The world is quite a challenging place for many people. So everyone's just focusing on kind of what they need to get done. And I think finally they're realizing, actually, and this is me included, by connecting with other people, we actually amplify the things we're doing. It can actually help make life easier, more fun, more creative, and more impactful. So this month's undercurrent is optimism through ecosystem. Can connecting with your wider ecosystem help you be more optimistic? I'd love to know. Well, that's all I have time for today. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. And don't forget to tag me in any stories that you think are interesting and let me know all of your views in the comments below. There will be more of this. I will be doing one every single month. So let me know your story ideas and like and subscribe so that you're here when we come back again. Next week, I will be answering more of your questions in the next episode of Sage by Name, and I will let you decide if it's Sage by Nature too. See you soon. Bye.